Okay, welcome back to Shmuel Aleph after a break of a few weeks. It's good to be back. Those of you who can remember where we were up to, we're in chapter 26, and we spent a long time comparing chapter 24 and chapter 26, which was two episodes where David has Shaul cornered, if you'll pardon the pun. And on the first time, he cuts a corner of his robe and humiliates him. And the second time, which is our chapter, he takes his spear and the water from close to his head to indicate that he could have killed him, but he didn't. And we spent a long time comparing the two episodes and asking the question why we needed to be told both episodes. And what we concluded at the end of the last shiur, which was 3 weeks ago, was that the second episode, which is our chapter 26, was in some way an emphasis of the scenario and also some kind of correction for the humiliation that David put Shaul through, because the second time he doesn't do anything permanent. When he cut off the corner of his robe, but that was a permanency that everybody could see. This time he did something impermanent. He took the spear and the water, which, as you will see, he returns. And so if you look at the language there, which we did in great detail, we see that this is a sort of a correction of what David himself feels was at least partially an incorrect act of his, that he humiliated Shaul, even though he didn't kill him. And I don't suppose any of you remember what the question was that I left you with at the end of the last shiur. No. Well, I didn't either. If it's any consolation, neither did I. But of course, I have to know where we're up to. So I listened to the last bit of the shiur, and the question was this. Let me share the screen with you. Okay, so you can see the screen, I hope. If you see me looking up, it's because I'm looking up like that at my other computer, so I can see you, and the words are on the lower computer because you've got two going at the moment because of this internet business. So what we said was in this chapter, verse 6. Jeffrey is not with us because he is en route to from England to America this morning. So I'll do the reading instead of Jeffrey. Verse 6 says, Vayan David, and David answered, Vayom, and he said, El Achimelech Achiti, to Achimelech the Chiti, Ve'el Avishai ben Tzeruya, Achi Yoav, and to Avishai, the son of Tzeruya, the brother of Yoav, Lamar, saying, Mi yerediti el Shaul el machna. Who will go down with me to Saul in the camp? Vayoma Avishai, ani eredimach. I'll go with you. So the question I left you with last time was, who is this chap here? Who is Achimelech the Hittite? We don't hear anything about him ever again. We hear lots about Avishai, and we'll come back to that later on. But right now, we don't hear anything else about Achimelech. Who is he? And what's he doing over here? And the other question is, why did he not answer with Avishai's answer? Avishai said, I'll go. But Achimelech kept stum. So, any suggestions as to who Achimelech is?
Rabbi Stansel says he's one of the several converts who had joined David because they had no inheritance of land amongst their own people.
All right, very nice. How does that help us?
That's all it says about him.
Okay, so it tells us that he was what? He was a foreigner. Well, we know that from he's a Hittite, and he was a mercenary. He was a mercenary. He joined David as a part of his force, and as you've just said there, Johnny, he was not a Jew. He was not part of David's team, as it were. He came to join him from outside. Now,
but David asked him first.
Yeah, he asked both of them, and he didn't answer. Why didn't he answer? Suggestions, please. I think, Peter, I asked you this question last time and you answered me. You gave me a very good answer. You're muted, Peter. You're still mute. There we go.
I remember relating to Achimelech, but maybe you can remind me.
Well, I think what you said was he was scared of attacking the king. He didn't want to attack the king because that's what it looked like David was asking him to do. And I think that is definitely partially right. Avishai, on the other hand, says, "I'll go." Right, he's right up for it, and we will see later on in Tanakh, and we might even jump a bit today to it. We will see that Avishai is a very violent man. He has a very short temper, and he's always trying to kill people. And in fact, if you look into Tanakh later on, which we will do, we'll get to into Shmuel Bet, when we see lots of activity around David's army. Avishai does a lot of killing. He's a very violent man, and he's got a very short temper, and he seems to be a very bloodthirsty sort of bloke. And when David says, "Who will go down with me?" he straight away got his hand up. "I'll go." Whereas Achimelech is a little bit more reticent, and he doesn't say anything. He does not fancy going down to confront the king. He's thinking, I think, well, this is not going to end well. We've got a battle here between David, who I'm meant to be supporting, and the king. That's not a great choice, really. So he keeps his mouth shut. So
how many men did David? Was David supposed to have, though? He only had 2 people.
Well, these were his major allies. These were his main guys. Avishai was his chief of staff, and presumably Achimelech was one of his main people. He wasn't taking a huge force down. This was a stealth exercise. He was going down into Shaul's camp, and as we'll see, he was going to creep into the place while they were all asleep and do something. Avishai, of course, thinks he's going to get a chance to kill somebody, namely the king. And as we'll see, David stops him. But he didn't need his full 600 men with him because this was not an attack against Shaul's men. This was a Mossad operation, right? This was an undercover job. So he just took his 2 best men. Or maybe he didn't. Maybe he only took Avishai. Maybe Achimelech didn't actually go. Look, we don't know. Achimelech doesn't volunteer to go. I suspect that if you look at verse 7, I suspect that Achimelech didn't go because it says, "And David and Avishai came to the people by night." So I think Achimelech did not go. So it was just the 2 of them. So we know that he's a little bit more circumspect than Avishai. Who else we haven't come to it yet, so you might not know this, but you might, because it's a very famous story. Who else did David have interaction with who was a Hittite in a later very famous story? Okay, let's make it easier for you. What's the most famous story you know of David HaMelech?
Goliath.
Yeah, Goliath. Yeah, the most
Goliath. Okay,
famous.
that was a previous story.
Bathsheba.
Bathsheba, yeah, that's the Bathsheba, yeah.
Oh,
Now,
her husband was her husband.
very
Her
good,
husband was a
Anita.
Hittite.
Her husband was a Hittite. Now, do you remember what his name was?
Uriah. Do you know Uriah?
Yes.
Uriah.
Uriah.
Yes,
Right.
Uriah in English, Uriah in Hebrew. Yes, Uriah Hittite. Now, what's really interesting is that there are commentators who want to tell us that this chap Achimelech was in fact Uriah.
Uriah.
Now, how do they get to that? It's a bit tenuous, I have to admit. I'm just trying to find my notes now. I've just put my finger on it. Where did I find it? Might have been in here. One sec. Here we go. I'm in the wrong page. Right. So he says here it might be argued that Achimelech was not quick to volunteer because he didn't know what David had in mind. And Avishai, on the other hand, who was eager to get some blood on his hands, was more violent. And he said Achimelech was more moderate and didn't want any part in the deed that he feared might take place. Now, Rav Amas Chacham, who I've never heard of, but is cited in the Dat Mikra commentary, suggests that Achimelech was in fact Uriah. And how does he get that? So he says that when we look at in chapter 14 of Shmuel Aleph, let me just get it up for you. I have to stop that share and get another share up for you. 1 second. Shmuel Aleph chapter 14. Right, there we go. Let me share that with you. So in chapter 14, there it is on the screen. We see here, verse 3, Achia ben Achituv. Okay, Achia ben Achituv. And what he wants to say is that Achimelech was actually Achia. This was the same person. He was Achia. Okay, Achia was the same person as Achimelech, because you can see the linguistic connection. And then he says the Hebrew letters of Uriah and Achia, because Chet and Hey are interchangeable. He says it's not a massive jump from Achia, the Hittite, in our chapter, to Uriah. There's our chapter again, back on the screen. If you say Achia, the Hittite, he says it's not a big jump with the letters to say Uriah, the Hittite. Now, it's a bit tenuous. I don't. And Nate is shaking their head. I'm not struck on it, to be honest. But it's interesting to go down this route for a second. If we accept it for a minute, then because we've got to find some reason why Achimelech is mentioned here. And my suggestion is that he's mentioned here because this is Uriah. And he wants to suggest that there is a linguistic connection. Because what are we being asked what was he being asked in here? Look at this here. Mi yered iti. David says, who will go down with me into Shaul's camp? All right. So where will you find those expressions again? Go down. Well, I'll show you. Chapter 11 of Shmuel Bet is the story of Bathsheba. There we go. It's on the. Can you see it on the screen now? I'm going up and down there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So have a look at this. Am I in the right place? No, silly boy. I'm in Shmuel Aleph. I mean to be in Shmuel Bet. No wonder I couldn't find it. There we go. That's more like it. Okay, right. So here we go. This is the famous bit. You'll know about this. And it came to pass at the time of evening that David arose from his bed and walked upon the roof of the king's house. Okay, we know what he saw. He saw a woman bathing from the roof. Okay, and the woman was very beautiful. This is the story of Bathsheba. And who was she? She was the wife of Uriah the Hittite. Yeah. Now, we know what happened. She got pregnant. And then Uriah came to David. Okay. David said to Joab, bring me Uriah. Uriah came to him, verse 7. And David inquired concerning the welfare of Joab and the peace of the people. He made some small talk. And then what did he say? Vayomer David leUriah, Red leveitcha, go down to your house. Go down to your house and wash your feet. Because what did he want him to do? He wanted him to go down to the house. He wanted him to have relationships with his wife, with Bathsheba, so that when it was established that she was pregnant, that it wasn't clear that it was David. I mean, it would be hidden that it was David who had made her pregnant. Anita's shaking her head there because it's a really rotten story. But of course, Uriah spoiled it all because what happened? Lo yered el beito. He did not go down to his house. Okay, he did not go down to his house. And then David says to him, why did you not go down to your house? Madua lo yaradata el beitecha. So there's this concept of going down is this Amos Chacham, this Rab Amos Chacham, who wants to say that Achimelech is really Uriah. He's basing it on a rather tenuous linguistic connection of his name, but he wants to tie it in because he wants to make it clear that this expression on our chapter, Mi Yered Iti, who will go down, is this connection to Uriah. John is also not all that impressed. I'm not all that impressed anyway, but I thought I would share it with you. But that's just by the way. As to who Achimelech, we don't know who he is. We're not told anything more about him. So there has to be some reason that he was mentioned here. And so Rav Amos Chacham comes up with this suggestion. And there you are. And so, and he says here, he says, what's the connection between the two stories? Well, in hindsight, it might be argued that even though our chapter 26, one second, Philip, even though our chapter 26 is a repair of chapter 24, it's still not showing, David hasn't really fully come clean, if you like, because he fails again at a later date with Bathsheba. That's the suggestion here. It's not particularly exciting, but that's a suggestion from Rav Amos Chacham. Yes, Philip, what would you like to say?
If you go a little further in the story, the question is, and this has always been my question, David was an adulterer. Wasn't he Chayav Misa?
Well, yeah and no. If you look at it in the surface, absolutely yes. But there's a Gemara, of course, a very famous Gemara that says anybody that says that David HaMelech sinned is mistaken, and they bring all sorts of different. We'll get to it when we do it. We'll do it in detail. Don't worry, we won't skip over it.
We're doing about the king in Sanhedrin now, aren't we?
Yes, we are, and doesn't mean the king can be an adulterer though. But there's all sorts of different things about whether she'd had a get because he was a soldier, and in those days they used to give a get al tanai. There's all sorts of excuses and whitewashes.
He sent him off to get killed. He sent him off to get killed.
He did. And so he could be said to be a murderer.
But they say that was him being kind because he was revolting against David anyway, and David should have committed.
Yeah, so these are all the excuses that are given in the Gemara as to why we say that David was not a sinner. However, if you actually look at the psukim, which we will in great detail when we get there, David says one word. What does he say? Chatati, I have sinned. He says to Nathan the prophet when Nathan tells him off, he says, I've sinned. Yeah,
it's right. Easy to get your rocks off and then to say that you've sinned.
Okay, well, we'll do it in detail. But yeah, so anyway, that's the connection between Uriah Hittite. We're gonna stick with where we are at the moment. Eventually, we will get to Shmuel Bet, and we will spend many hours learning about David and Bathsheba. So don't worry, we won't skip over it. It's one of my favorite stories. Okay. Right.
There's a footnote here that Avishai, son of Seruiah is actually a woman. It's David's sister.
Okay. Coming to that. That's the next bit.
I'm just reading his footnote.
Yeah. So we know now, don't we, who Achimelech is? Either he was Uriah or he was some unknown mercenary hired by David to fight with him. So who was Avishai? Well, we're told who Avishai was. The very interesting piece of Tanakh here. Avishai, the son of Seruiah, the brother of Yoav. Now,
who was the brother of Yoav? Seruiah or Avishai?
No, Avishai was the brother of Yoav.
Okay.
So Yoav and Avishai were the sons of Seruiah. Now, normally, when we have a situation where you say the brother of somebody, it's because it's putting him in context, right? And we say, so Miriam was the sister of Aaron and Moshe, right? Because we know who Aaron and Moshe are, right? So, but who's Yoav? How does it help us? How does it help us to know that Avishai is the brother of Yoav?
He was the captain.
Wasn't he in charge of the military?
How do you know that he was? What did you say, Hannah?
Wasn't he Shaul's chief of military?
How do you know that?
I don't know.
He's one of the heads of David's camp. David's
wasn't because Yoav killed somebody.
Okay, all right, Anita, how do you know?
Because that comes later, doesn't it?
Yes, it comes later, and that is the conundrum here. It says the brother of Yoav, as if we're meant to know who Yoav is. This is the first time Yoav is ever mentioned.
Yeah.
So what's he telling us, a brother of Yoav? That's not very helpful.
Maybe it's information. Maybe it's information for the future. Because you said Avishai was very bloodthirsty and very ready to kill. And Yoav became the head of the military. So there's I'm losing my English. There's a common trait there.
Yeah, there's a connection. You're right. There is a common trait. The problem is that this particular pasuk has been used by those people who want to say that Tanakh was written by all sorts of different authors, and then at a very, very much later date was cut and pasted together, and that this bit is really completely out of sync because it's telling us the brother of Yoav, and we don't know who Yoav is. And so the Bible critics who want to cast aspersions on the authenticity of Tanakh use this as a little bit of ammunition, because we don't know who Yoav is at this point. Later on, we find out that he is one of the generals. Again, he was also a very bloodthirsty person, and Hannah is absolutely right that there is a connection between Avishai. Now, Johnny mentioned Seruiah. It was the sister of David. Now, that's not entirely clear either. We see later, just to go back to Yoav a minute, Yoav is even more violent than Avishai. He kills Avner later on, and he also kills Avshalom. Who was Avshalom?
David's son.
David's son, who rebelled against him. Yoav is got his hands full of blood. Now, so this Seruiah, there is a suggestion that Seruiah was the daughter, was the sister of, the sister of David. But the problem is, so that makes Avishai and
Yoav.
What's his name? Avishai and Yoav, his nephews, right? His nephews. But it's not quite so straightforward, because there is another place in Tanakh where Seruiah is described not as the daughter of, who should she be the daughter of?
Yishai.
Yishai. She should be called the daughter of Yishai, but she's not. She's called the daughter of somebody else. Can't remember exactly who it was now. I can't just put my finger on the notes. But anyway, it's not clear that she was necessarily his sister. It seems to be that there's a difference of opinion. Either way, they're very violent people, Avishai and Yoav. So it says, he says in this piece here, the first time Yoav is mentioned is later on in Shmuel Bet, and there we're not told anything about him. That was the other point. We're just told Yoav. We're not told, he's not given any title. We're meant to know about him. That's the problem with the Yoav bit. Just trying to find here who it was that they said was Seruiah's father, other than Yishai. And I can't just put my finger on it, but it doesn't matter. Okay, let's have a look. Let's go on in our chapter. Where are we in our chapter? Okay, here we go. So David said to them, "Who will go down with me?" David and Avishai came to the people by night. Shaul was asleep with a barricade with his spear thrust into the ground at his head, and Avner and the people were lying around him. Who was Avner?
It's one of his bodyguards.
Yes, Avner was his chief of staff. Correct.
Chief of staff, yes.
Yeah, Avner was Shaul's chief of staff. And so look at this here. Verse 8. Avishai says to David, "Vayom Avishai el David, Sigar Elohim hayom et oiviv yivcha beyadecha." God has closed in your enemy into your hand. Remember, we spoke about that a few weeks ago. Sagar alehem amidbar. Paro said that the midbar, the desert, had closed in the Bnei Israel before Kriyat Yamsuf, and they were there ripe for the taking. Avishai says he's closed you in. He says, "Vata now, akenu na." Please, he says, nah, he's desperate to have a go at him. Please, let me strike him. Our translation doesn't say please, but the word nah means please. He's begging him for an opportunity to kill him. And what does David say? No, al tashchitehu, don't destroy him. Ki mi shalach yado b'mashiach Hashem v'nikah. Who can stretch forth his hand against the Lord's anointed and be accounted guiltless? In other words, you can't go around killing the anointed one of God. That's Shaul right now. Shaul's the king. You can't do that. Now, Avishai has got a very good memory, because later on, I'm going to show you later on, when it comes to, there's a story of Shimi ben Gera. Shimi ben Gera, this is in Shmuel Bet, Shimi ben Gera cursed David. Okay, and he cursed David, and what he wanted to do, what Avishai wanted to do, was to kill him for it. And I think I've got it somewhere here. Let me just have a look. It is in Shmuel Bet, chapter 16, I think. Yeah, chapter 16.
You're on 19. You're on 19 there.
I'm on 19 there. Let's get to 16. Okay. So this is a story of Shimi ben Gera. We'll come to it in due course. He curses the king, and there we go. And so said Shimi in his curse, "Begone, begone, you man of blood, you wicked man." That's what he's saying to David, right? And here we go. Look at this. Verse 9. Vayom Avishai ben Tzeruya. Same person. El Hamelech says it to the king, right? Who's the king? Who's he talking to here? Who's the king by this time?
David.
David says to David, Lama yekalel hakelev hamet hazeh. Why should this dead dog curse et Adoni Hamelech, my lord the master, my lord the king? He calls him a dead dog, this Shimi ben Gera. Nice chap, huh? Ebrana, please, again, please, let me cross over the Asira et Rosho, and I shall remove his head. Let me at him, and I'll chop his head off. And Vayoma Hamelech, and David the king says, "Oi, ma liva lachem b'nei Tzeruya. What am I going to do with you lot, you children of Tzeruya?" Right? Yekalel, let him curse. So what? Ki Hashem amar lo kalel et David u'miyomeh madua asita kain. Because Hashem has said to him, curse David. So why have you got to see? Why have you done so? Leave him alone. He must have a reason for cursing me. Don't worry, I'm not bothered by the curse. But Avishai is not satisfied with that. He's not satisfied. Listen to this. Vayomer David al Avishai vel kol avadav. No, sorry. David says, leave him alone. Wait a minute. Where are we? Hang on a minute. Hang on. There's a he calls him the anointed of God. Here we go. I was in chapter 19. So that was the story. He curses him. Now we have to go to chapter 19 for the end of the story. There we go. Chapter 19 for the end of the story. And we see in chapter 19 over here, and the king arose and sat at the gate, and all the people were notified. Behold, the king is sitting at the gate. Here we go. Here we go. So he says here, you've got to Avishai, the son of Tzeruiah, verse 22. In exchange for this, shall Shimei not be put to death for having cursed the Lord's anointed? Later on in the story, he again wants to kill Shimei, but look what he calls him, Mashiach Adonai. He says, wait a minute, David. Wait a minute. When I wanted to kill Shaul back in chapter 26 of Shmuel Aleph, you wouldn't let me because you said, no, he's the anointed one of God. The anointed one of God, you can't start with him. This Shimei fellow has now cursed you, and you are the anointed one of God now. So hang on a minute, you've got to be consistent. So if it was not okay to kill the king, it's certainly not okay to curse the king. And so you are now the anointed one of God, and so I want to chop his head off. And David says, he says that same expression again. What am I going to do with you? All you want to do is kill people. And he says, shall any man be put to death today in Israel? Leave him alone. Leave him alone. But the interesting thing is that Avishai remembered all that time later, a long time later, after he wanted to kill Shaul, he remembered that expression of Mashiach Hashem. And so if we go back to our chapter, David says, you can't kill the anointed one of God. You can't start with him. So Avishai remembers that and uses it against David when he's desperate to kill somebody or other. On this occasion, it's Shaul. On that occasion, it was Shimei. And David says, no, Chalila li me Hashem, mishloach yadi b'Mashiach Hashem. Far be it from me to stretch forth my hand against Hashem's anointed. So what does he do? He tells Avishai, this is interesting. He says to him, Kach na, please take et achanit asher marashotav, the spear which is next to his head, ve'et sapachat hamayim, and the little water jug which is next to his head, v'neilcha lanu, and we'll go away. So he says, you're not to kill him. Go and get his spear and his jug of water, and we will go. We'll leave. So then what happens? Next pasuk. Vayikach David et achanit v'et tzapachat hamayim me rashotei Shaul, and David took the spear and the jug of water from the head of Shaul, vayelchu lahem, and they went away. What do you notice? It's a bit odd there. What do you notice about verse 12 that's a little strange, bearing in mind verse 11? Okay, let's read verse 11 again.
They were suddenly asleep. They
were asleep. The men were asleep. David's Shaul's bodyguards. Verse 11. Far be it from me, the Lord, to stretch my forth hand against us, and now take the spear which is at his head and the jug of water, and let us go away. And David took the spear and the jug of water from near Saul's head, and they went away. What's the problem with that?
He's telling him in verse 11. Oh, sorry. In verse 11, he's saying to Avishai, you take the spear. And then in the next verse, David took the spear.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Exactly. We couldn't hear you, Johnny. You were muted. Exactly. He says to Avishai, you take the spear. And then he does it himself. Why?
Because he's scared that Avishai will kill Shaul.
Yeah, absolutely. He knows Avishai. He said he regrets telling him to go and take it. He says, you know what? I'll do it myself. Don't trust you. He doesn't trust him to go and get the spear and not to do Shaul in. He thinks better of it, if you like. In verse 11, he says, Avishai, go and get the spear. In verse 12, he's thought again. He says, no, I'll do it myself. I don't trust him. It's a good example of you want a job doing properly, Do it yourself. He doesn't
thought
trust
that
me.
before, when he asked them to go down with him, the other one said no, we didn't go. This one, he said, look, this is the plan. We want to go down. I don't want to kill him. I just want to take his spear and his things, creep down quietly, take it and leave.
Well, first of all, you don't know that that's what he said. We don't know.
Yeah,
all we know is that David said, "Who will come down with me to Shaul?" And Avishai, being a violent sort of person, immediately thought he's going to be up for a fight.
Yeah, I was saying, but David didn't say at the beginning. Look,
correct. He didn't say. He didn't. Yeah. You're right. He didn't say. He didn't say. So Avishai was a bit disappointed. You know, if I was to say to Philip, come down. We're gonna have some fun here. We're gonna go down to the enemy camp and we'll have a bit of fun. Philip's immediately going to think he's going to be in for a bit of karate. When actually what I really meant was we're going to go and talk to them and try and persuade them to join us. But Philip, of course, being like Avishai, would have thought he was right up for a fight. Yeah, Philip.
I talk a lot too. I mean, it's not only fighting. I do talk a lot too.
Also, you said it was a mercenary, Johnny.
Yeah.
So
well, Avishai was not a mercenary. If we say Avishai was the son, Achimelech was a mercenary.
Yes, and he didn't go down. He was getting paid.
Yeah.
He didn't go down.
Avishai was all the time loyal to David, where Achimelech was not.
Correct. Yeah, correct. The only problem is David's most loyal lieutenant was very violent.
Yeah.
And so David had to rein him in.
Yeah.
And you can see that from the later Psukim with Shimi ben Gera, which we just went. He keeps on saying, he says it twice. He says, what am I going to do with you, children of Tzeruiah, my nephews, if we say that Tzeruiah was his sister? What am I going to do with you? Stop being so violent. So, yes, he was very loyal, Peter, but that loyalty came with by the way, I've just thought of something. It does actually fit that Tzeruiah was the sister of David, and that his nephews were short-fused and had a hot temper. Why does that fit?
Well, there's a lot of people in David's family that were pretty violent. That's
true, and David himself had a very short temper. What did we just read in chapter 25? Right? He was willing he wanted to go and slaughter the whole lot of Naval.
Yeah.
Okay, and all his family, and he wanted to leave not even a dog left. He wanted to go. Why? Because he never got any. He didn't give him his a few loaves of bread. So it was only because Abigail stopped him. So we know that David, who was a redhead, right? We know he was a gingy. We also know that he was short-tempered. So what does the Gemara tell you about when you're making a shidduch?
To check out the color of your mechutton's hair.
Not quite. You're on the right line.
No, check out the character of the family.
It says you want to know what your children.
Look at your mother-in-law. I was told your future mother-in-law.
Well, that's good advice.
And it was good advice.
Yeah, that's good advice. But what the Gemara says is, you want to know what your children will be like. Look at your future wife's brother.
Oh, the brother.
Yeah, because that's what your children are going to be like. So Tzeruiah, I don't know who Mr. Tzeruiah was, but Mr. Tzeruiah, right? And Tzeruiah's husband may well have looked at David and thought, oh, he's a bit short-tempered. And then what did he get? He got Avishai and Yoav, two really short-tempered, violent men. Just saying, that's all. An interesting aside. So where are we now? So they've gone away.
There's three brothers and I got three daughters.
Well, there you go. You see. So they cross over to this other side of the mountain. They take over. They take the spear and the water, and they go over to the other side of the mountain. Now, one was on one side of the mountain. David was on one side of the mountain with Avishai and the spear and the water. and Shaul's camp was on the other side. What does that remind you of? I'll give you a clue. Somebody has
David
mentioned
and
it this morning.
Goliath.
Yes, correct. Remember, that's how it all started. Those who you have been on our Tiulim, we've been twice to
Outside
Tel
Beit
Azakah.
Shemesh.
Yeah, near Beit Shemesh. Tel Azakah. So a most wonderful place. You look down onto the valley where this all happened. And the Tel Azakah is the Israelite side, and the other side of the valley there is where the Plishtim were. And down in the valley where you look over at Tel Azakah, you can close your eyes and you can imagine all the people on one side, people on the other side, and David and Goliath in the valley there. It's a fabulous place. Those who've never been to Tel Azakah, you have to go, but you have to go with a guide. You have to go with somebody who knows Tanakh, who will learn the psukim with you there that we learned in detail back in chapter 14, maybe, I don't know, can't remember, maybe before that. Anyway, the story of David and Goliath. So this is. I think that there's a subtle hint here in this pasuk. I've not seen that anywhere in any Mefarshim. It's my own Torah, so you can disagree with it if you like. You can disagree with other people's as well, by the way, but you can especially disagree with mine if you want. So David crossed to the other side and stood on the mountain. The space between them was great. Now, what does that mean? Rav Hamakom Beneim. There was a great space between them.
Had his own reasons for disagreeing, but he always kept respectfully quiet.
Who was that?
Akivia.
Akavia ben Mahalalel. He did indeed. Yes. He did. So Rav Hamakom Beneim, he says the space between them was great. But then it says, Vayikra David el Ha'am ve'el Avner ben Ner lemor. Halo ta'aneh Avner. Why are you not answering, Avner? Hang on a minute. If there's a great space between them,
wouldn't hear.
What did he have? Some kind of megaphone?
Yeah.
So what's going on here, Anita? What's going on? Why is the Tanakh telling us there was a great space between them, and David called to the people?
Well, maybe because there's a big space, but yet he'd gone to their camp and taken away the sword of the spear and the water, and disappeared back to his side of the mountain again. And I don't know.
We're already told that. What does it add to say Rav Hamakom Beneim? There was a great space between them. What does it tell us? It can't mean there's a physical space between them, because he wouldn't have been able to hear, like you said. So what does it mean? I think what it means is that there was a great space between them. They were miles apart, right? It's an expression we say in English, doesn't it? If you've got a negotiation going on, they're miles apart.
Yeah,
they're on a different page altogether, in a different place. I think this is a philosophical expression. Rav Hamakom Beneim means that at this point, David and Shaul were as far apart as you can get. David is doing his best. What is David trying to do here? What is the whole point of this exercise? He's trying to come close to Shaul, to tell Shaul he's not a danger. Don't be seeking my life. Don't be trying to kill me. I'm not a danger to you. But right at this moment, he's as far away as possible of achieving that aim as he can be. And he says, that's what I think it means, because it can't mean a physical distance. It doesn't make any sense. So then he says to the people and to Avner, who was Avner? We've just said he was the chief of staff. He was the main bodyguard. And he says to him, Avner, why are you not answering? And he does answer. Vayan Avner, and Avner says, Vayoma miata karata el Achimelech. This is a modern Hebrew expression. Miata. But they usually add on another word at the end of it.
Bichlal.
Bichlal. Miata bichlal. Which means, Peter?
Can you hear me? Oh, yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
You know, you're small compared to me. You know,
Yeah.
you're incidental in all this.
Well, who do you think you are?
Not
important.
Yeah, mi'ata bichlal. Who are you anyway? I think that's how I would translate it.
Well,
who are
do you
anyway?
think you are?
Yeah, who do you think you are? That's a good one. Who do you think you are? Who are you anyway? You're just a nobody. It's a really insulting thing to say. Don't say it to anybody. In modern Hebrew, it's a really insulting thing. It's just about the most insulting thing you could say, especially to certain groups of people who I won't say. But just don't say mi'ata bichlal. It's a horrible thing to say.
It's typical Israeli that
yeah, it's
native. It's
ultimate put down, and that's what Avner is saying.
You know that a little 6-year-old once said that to me. Mi'ata bichlal.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, that 6-year-old will not have made it up himself. He'll have heard it from his parents, won't he?
Yeah, of course.
Anyway, this is what Avner says to David. Mi'ata karata Achimelech. Who are you calling out to the king? Who do you think you are? Chutzpah, calling out to the king. And David does not take up the bait, and he says, "Vayomer David al Avner, hang on a minute. Halo ish ata umi chamocha b'Yisrael. Aren't you supposed to be the big shot guy that there's nobody like you in Israel? Aren't you supposed to be guarding the king? Aren't you supposed to be their chief of staff, the ganze knacker with the falafels on your thingamajig? Right? What's going on? Why have you not looked after the king?" David's taunting him here. He's taunting him. He's saying, "Wait a minute, I thought you were such a wonderful bodyguard. How come I've been able to do what I've been able to do?" Of course, how was he able to do it?
They're all asleep.
Why were they asleep, Johnny?
Hashem made them fall into a deep sleep.
Yeah, Hashem made them fall into a deep sleep because it was a miracle.
Because he'd given them a Mickey Finn.
Maybe he'd given them a Mickey Finn, yeah. Okay, I've not heard that expression for a while, a Mickey Finn. You have not done your job. Because one of the people came to destroy the king, your master. In other words, he's stressing the fact that somebody came to kill the king, and it's your responsibility to have stopped him. Who came to kill?
On his watch. On his watch.
On his watch. Who came to call? Who came to kill the king? Not
Avishai.
David never came.
Avishai.
Avishai came to kill the king. Oh yes, he did. Definitely, he was there chomping at the bit. He was not interested in any kind of negotiation here. He just wanted a bit of blood on his hands. And you, Avner, have been derelict in your duty on your watch. And then he carries on. He's not finished yet. He says, "Lo tov hadavar hazeh. Lo tov hadavar hazeh. This is not good what you did. This is not good what you did." Where have you heard that expression, "Lo tov hadavar"? It is not good for
at the golden calf.
No.
Wasn't Chava persuading Adam?
Whoa, Anita, you're on fire today. Absolutely on fire.
You're on fire today.
Lo tov liot adam levad. It's not good for a man to be alone. So what happened? HaKadosh Baruch Hu made Chava. Okay, so it's lo tov, which is the first time we're told that something is not good in the Torah. Everything else until that time was Vayar Hashem kitov. God saw that it was good what he'd made, and then he saw it was not good for man to be alone. So this expression lo tov is connected to a man being alone. So he's hinting at it here. Lo tova davar hazeh asher asita. What did you do, Avner? In fact, effectively, you left your master alone, unprotected. Because what is the chava? What is the woman meant to be? What did Hashem say after that? Lo tov liot la'adam liot levad. It's not good for a man to be alone. Esther, I will make.
Ezer lenegdo.
Very good. Ezer kenegdo. Yeah, Ezer kenegdo. A helper opposite him. And so he's saying to him, to Avner, he's hinting to him, you left him vulnerable. You left him vulnerable alone. And that is not good. Chai Hashem, ki b'nei mavet atem. You are worthy of death. You are derelict in your duty. You should be put to death. Why? Asher lo shmartem et adoneichem. You did not look after your master, not just your master, but al Mashiach Adonai, the anointed one of God. There's our expression again. Okay, the anointed one of God. This is not just any old master. This is the king, the anointed one of God.
Johnny, B'nai Mavet is a term that is used today about Sinwar and about Hania and all those guys also. You know, that's the expression. It comes from here. B'nai Mavet.
Yeah, if you're B'nai Mavet, means you're a dead man walking.
Yeah.
And then he goes on, he says, V'ata, with an ayin over here. And now, Re'ei, see, Ei chanit hamelech, ve'et tzapachat hamayim, asher marashotav. And he says to him, and by the way, where's the king's spear and his jug of water? Right? Where is it? I mean, that was a rhetorical question because presumably David was sort of, holding it up like this, Here it is. Where? Oh, by the way, where's the spear? Oh, is this it? I wonder how I got that. Okay, you can imagine it.
I think there are two of you on fire today, you and Anita.
David's enjoying this. You can see he's enjoying Avner's discomfiture here. And it's all part of David's plan to get the message over to Shaul. And of course, what happens is, have we got any more time or we're up in time? Okay, we'll just do the next pasuk, just as an intro to next week. Vayaker Shaul et kol David. And Shaul recognized David's voice because until now, David has been speaking to Avner, not to the king. Okay, but Shaul hears what's going on. He recognizes David's voice. Vayoma, and he says, "Akol chazeh b'ni David." Is that your voice? I can hear, David, my son.
Yes, certainly my son. Yeah. Certainly he's become the good guy because
we had the same thing in chapter 24, if you remember. The end of chapter 24, they're all pally again. He suddenly is my son. But then again, after chapter 24, he tried to kill him again. And that's why we needed chapter 26. So he says, is that your voice, my son David? Vayoma David. And David says, Koli Adoni Hamelech. It is my voice, but you are still my master, the king. Okay, and they will stop there for a breather. It's a cliffhanger. What's going to happen next? If you don't want to know,
they were all loving.
Don't want to know, don't read on. But you probably already have.
They weren't very far away, Johnny. They weren't actually very far away, though. If even King Saul could hear him then.
Correct. That's right, and that's why I say Rav Hamakom Bechem. That expression can't mean a physical space. It means, I think it means a philosophical space, a spiritual space, whatever. It's not. It's psychological. It's not physical. It can't be. It doesn't make any sense otherwise. All right. Well, that was an interesting little thing. What did we do today? Let's just summarize. We spoke about Rav, what was he called? Amaf Chacham's rather tenuous connection between Achimelech, the Hittite, and Uriah HaChittite. As far as I can see, the only real connection is that they were both Hittites, but he seems to think that there was a great connection between the two stories because of the words Yered will go down. I think it's a bit schwach personally, but I put it to you for your own opinions. We saw that Avishai, the brother of Yoav, we saw the problem that Yoav is mentioned here without telling us who he is, and that causes us problems with the Bible critics because they use that as ammunition to say the whole thing was all put together later. We know and we see the violence of Avishai, but he does have a good memory. We went into the story of Shimi ben Gera a little bit, who cursed David, and Avishai wanted to chop his head off as well. David wouldn't let him. And then he said, well, what about the anointed of God business? You told me that back then. Come on, let me have a go. And so we saw that Avishai's violence. Zeruiah, possibly the sister of David, which would make sense because the nephews of David were also short-tempered. They might have been gingers as well. We don't know. We're not told. And we saw that. And then we saw this very interesting idea that David seems to be taunting Avner and saying that Avner hasn't done his job properly. And David seems to be rather enjoying this discomfiture of Avner. And suddenly Shaul wakes up, literally, and says, "Whoa, David, is that you?" And he says, "Yes, that's me, your master. My master, the king." And we'll see next week what transpires. Any questions?
No, thank you.
No.
Okay, see you next week.
It's as clear as mud.
Very good.
Shavua tov, everyone. Shavua tov.
Good.
Take it easy. Bye. Bye-bye.